Hey, Rachel, how's it going? Thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. We had a chance to kind of connect prior to this. And sometimes in podcasting worlds, people come through referrals or we met through a network of podcasting. So I got a chance to read your profile before this, but I can already tell that your story has so much more depth than the written word. So you are deep within the healing of astrology and practical magic, if that's fair to say, mentor coach with people, taking them on those deeper journeys of self mastery and being part of that. So I definitely, where I want to start is actually the simplest place. Tell us a bit more about the astrology or how you got into it and really kind of wherever you'd like to start, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I always like to tell how I got into astrology in a way that kind of backtracks in my story because I've been in personal development for a really long time. And that is what led me to astrology. So I got into personal development when I was 9 years old. Yeah, I was pretty young. I'm now 31. When I was nine, I was obese and I didn't talk and I didn't have any friends. And I remember I would go to school and I would just stare at everyone and they'd be talking and laughing and playing. And I would be so confused because I felt like I was swimming in an ocean. I didn't know how to talk and I couldn't figure out how to be a normal human. And so I would just go home and I would eat and closet eat. And my mom didn't know why I was obese and I didn't know. I just thought there was something wrong with me. I looked different, I acted different, all the things.
Mhm.
Turns out I was stuffing my feelings with food. So I found this weight loss camp when I was 9. It was called Camp Shane. Actually, the movie Heavyweights, if anyone that was based on the camp I went to. So I went to that camp determined. I begged my parents to let me go for 6 weeks because they said you'd lose 20 pounds and I wanted to look like the other kids. So my parents let me go. I worked my butt off. I gave everything I had and I lost 23 pounds in 6 weeks and I kept it off.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I kept it off after that, but it taught me a lot of eating disorder issues. And so then my mission was, okay, now I need to figure out how to stay thin without being miserable. Like I was going balls to the wall at 9 years old, like working out all the
Yeah.
time, eating very little, not healthy.
Yeah.
And so that put me on a path. And I also made some friends after the weight loss camp. So then I associated thinness with friends and it gave me
Oh, interesting.
confidence. So then from 9 years old all through high school, I would stay up until 3 a.m. researching diets and how to stay thin. And
Interesting.
I'd wake up at 4 a.m. before high school and I'd make myself go to the gym. I worked so hard. I eventually went
Yeah.
to college for nutrition, thinking that will give me my answer. The answer is
Sure.
outside of me. I'm going to find it and I will be free from this. I go to college and I work my butt off again. And by the end of college, I am severely disappointed because you have to look at a bunch of studies in nutrition when you're a nutrition major. And what I had found was there were so many studies to support one thing and a bunch of studies that supported the exact opposite thing. And I wanted to pull my hair out as a person who
Yeah.
loved research.
Right.
Just wanted answers and nothing was working. And so I hit this rock bottom after college of that did not give me my answer. I feel more
Yeah.
constricted by food in my body than ever. And so I thought, well, more school. And so then I took a class to give lab exams to be a functional nutrition person who can test different things like hormones and stuff. And that didn't help either because I got to do it on myself. Nothing changed.
Okay.
And then that brought me to being so miserable. I'm in my 20s. I had graduated from college. I'm like, F nutrition because I don't even know if this stuff works to learn about it. Um, I'm restricting my food more than ever. And I just hit a rock bottom where I gave up. Like those moments where you give everything you have and you just surrender.
Yeah.
And I started eating just healthy food. I was like, I'm going to eat whole foods and vegetables and work out and we'll see what happens. And within a few months, my body weight stabilized at a body weight that previously was so hard for me to maintain. And it
Yeah.
was effortless now. I wasn't thinking about it. I was listening to my body. And it was the first time I connected to my intuition. And I
Mm.
thought, wow, that took me 20 something years. If I can do that, though, I can change other things. I can heal my relationship with women because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I had a wound around it. And that pushed me into attending a lot of women's retreats. We're getting to the birth chart reading thing. So, a lot of these women's retreats had changed my life, and I wanted to host my own retreat. But I had no right to host a retreat. I had no clients, no retreat hosting experience except for going to them. A lot of the people on these retreats had met with this astrologer named Pam. in San Diego. And so I decided to book a reading with Pam. And in my reading with Pam, she tells me about my North Node and my South Node, which today I use heavily in my practice because they are an evolutionary axis in your birth chart. They tell you where you came from and where you're going, like your North Star in this lifetime and what you're gifted in, also a little wounded in because you spent many past lives here.
Okay.
And she basically made it seem like in my past life, I had hosted things like retreats. She didn't say that specifically, but my brain took it as a permission slip for me to host a retreat, even though I had no logical reason to. I didn't have a credit card, so I asked my mom if I could put a Airbnb on her credit card, and she is the best and said yes because she trusts me. And within a month, I was so hyped up about this retreat that I sold it out with 14 people in a month.
Right. That's really good, by the way, too. There's because I know, and I don't want to get lost in this. I want to keep going. I know other people that have thrown retreats and actually struggled a little bit to find. So, I mean, there really was a calling to that. That's
Yeah, and that's the
not meant to
thing,
be.
is how many
Yeah.
people obsess over things, but you don't have permission to do it, or then the doubts get in the way because no one told you you've done it before. It's almost like her telling me that I've done it before gave me confidence
Ah,
and opened up this whole new portal, and then I went on to host 6 retreats in 2 years.
that's great.
And through
Wow.
it, I just became obsessed with astrology because I was like, "If that led me to this breakthrough, what else could it do?" And oh my god, it just when I got into astrology, I started hopping timelines, as you could call it, or
Sure.
changing
Yeah.
giant things, internal shifts every few months. And oh my god, there's so many directions I could go in. Like my relationship with
Yeah.
my boyfriend skyrocketed. Like we did
Yeah.
so many things with each other because I understood him now. I had his birth chart. I understood what's happening in the sky and I knew how to respond to certain things.
Yeah.
Um, it's helped me every time I've pivoted in my business. It's helped me let go of hosting retreats because I started not wanting to host them anymore, but I felt like everyone was telling me, "You built this whole thing, you have to keep
Yeah.
going." The sky confirmed how I felt, and so I trusted myself. I use it with my clients now too, and I find that astrology connects you in a way that helps you trust yourself, and it is a giant permission slip to listen to your intuition, and it will connect you to your intuition because every time you wanna do something and you look to your chart or your astrology or what's happening in the sky, it can give you either a breakthrough of how to do it or whether it's right for you. It gives you something to hang your hat on to trust your intuition, and I tell everyone, "You will become psychic if you start following your astrology," because 'cause I've seen it happen in my life and my clients' lives. So, yeah.
That's phenomenal. So, okay, we have a lot to talk about here because you really brought up a lot of different points. So I want to actually go backwards and then right where we're at now so that we can continue leaping forward with the astrology. But the story of the little girl, the 9-year-old girl, when you said that, it was interesting because I could feel the pain. And whether you knew it or not, it seemed like that was the healing's journey. I'm kind of thinking of like Chiron or something, the wounded healer, going to the camp. And it, what was really interesting too is going through the school and then you leaned into the education. So it was kind of seeking the pattern recognition to figure it out in this corporeal world with the nutrition. Like you were going to break the code, self directive education of sorts, where some people, maybe it's their psyche or their emotional breakdown and they go into psychology. They're like, I need to figure out psychology because if I figure out psychology, I can master my emotions. It's not that it's a fool's errand. I can only imagine the knowledge that you were able to draw in and glean from that. So even though maybe that didn't quite give you the exact result, I can imagine the value that it did bring you through your path as well. Um,
Totally what it taught me is the answers are inside, and I just have to confirm
sure.
what I already know instead
Yeah.
of excessively searching outside of me, and that is where the ungrounding comes from.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because I think that's a phenomenal life lesson. I think there could be just to kind of overgeneralize something. Yeah. A very simple point. We feel a pain or a tinge or an excommunication or we're rejected or something in there. I don't have this and I really want this, or some type of, if we go into the logic world, into the left brain thinking. We think we can work our way there. We can think our way there. We can figure out the pieces and logically get there. And all along, that coming back to home feeling in a sense where the deep knowledge really is here. And for you to come all the way full circle to find intuitive eating, let's just call it for the example you gave. I'll be honest with you too, that really is the way to go. Just knowing what's in your food, making your food, simple ingredients was a shift in my life too. It wasn't over obsessing about the counts and all these other things. And there's a huge value to it. So I don't want to diminish anybody who's really in tune with that. But just for me, that wasn't a driver. So just simple foods is a big shift. And intuitively, if I feel like I want raisins, I'm like, eat some raisins. There's something in there I can draw into. So I know that's a very simple, potentially silly example, but I believe there's value to it. So, but it's almost one of those things too, where it's like for you to get to that intuitive spot and the recognition of the intuitive spot, you had to go for. I mean, we're talking almost a couple decades or 15 years
It was a couple decades.
of discipline. Like that to get to that point. And I'm not saying you wouldn't have gone to that point, but
Actually think, like, when I think of, I have very scorpionic energy in my chart. I am a Taurus, but I have my Taurus in the house of Scorpio, which I don't expect anyone to understand what I'm talking about. But I will say Scorpio, I know you have a Scorpio moon.
yeah.
Me and you actually have a lot of similarities, so I feel like my
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, let's talk about that at some point
yeah,
here too. So, yeah.
but the Scorpio path was transformative, and one of the ways Scorpio transforms is it leaves no stone left unturned until
Mm,
it surrenders control, and then it
interesting.
comes into its
Okay.
power. Or Scorpio can transform by just accessing its power from the very beginning and recognizing that it's all inside and how it thinks about itself and how connected it is to itself, and it can leverage the energetic state of where you're at to magnetize things to it. So it can be an energy that leaves no stone left unturned and teaches you a lot of lessons and transforms you. But it
Yeah.
also is an energy that transforms a million different ways. I actually think there's like a million ways to just cat when it comes to transformation, and Scorpio really speaks to that. But yeah, I would actually say that it gave me that Scorpio transformation power, but it also gave me a deeper level of wisdom when it comes to nutrition and the body that I think can
Yeah.
only come through learning everything and then realizing none of it matters.
Oh my god.
You know?
So yeah, no, absolutely. And again, this is what we're talking about here are individual journeys of self-mastery that we do in love and relationships and money and careers and health and everything. And God, what a self-recognition I just had because when you were talking about the Scorpio aspect of no stones unturned. And if there's somebody listening that doesn't buy into astrology or reject it, but there's behavioral patterns of leaving no stone unturned. So there's times in my life where somebody could tell me the answer, but I was like, I don't care. I want to fail a bunch of times and I'm going to continue to stumble and fall until I viscerally feel it and smell it and taste it. I've exhausted everything. Even knowing somebody could have potentially fast was picking up on a stubbornness in there too.
Yeah.
And then you said, in my understanding, they can be stubborn as well.
Scorpio and are on the same axis, so
Yeah.
in the same energy path. Yes.
So then there's a stubbornness to be like, no, I'm going to do this path no matter what, hell or high water, fail, whatever, skin my knees. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do this my way. And there's nothing you can do to tell me different. So when you said that, I was like, wow, that's a really interesting behavioral pattern.
You have the same south node as me and north node.
Oh, I do?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Oh,
you also come from seeking a lot of knowledge outside
yeah.
of you, or, like, thinking that the things are outside of you, are very thinking and mental and learning
Yeah. Lost
processes,
in,
to trusting
yeah.
your truth. Like, trusting your truth is your North
Yeah.
Star, like, making your own meaning and trusting your own truth, and that was my North Star in this lifetime too, so me and you are very similar.
Oh, wow. That's cool. May I do another little pattern there that you just kind of there's an idea, and I hate to take the mic, so
No,
but
please,
I'll
I
do it
love
just
this.
this. So, um, I visualized like kind of three minds of the body of sense. There's the mind, the brain, and then there's the heart mind, and then there's the gut. And not just the stomach. I mean, the gut where all the chemicals are produced and, the gut instinct and everything. So the gut almost represents, in my mind, the mother earth, the matra, the material. And then the head is the father sky. And we get into that with the speaking and stuff. And when those two maybe are not in sync, the mother and the father, it's really tugs at the heart space in that center space. And I can see where what you just pointed out, I never really saw it in this way, but what was picked up on was kind of getting lost in the thoughts but then pulling in the material information around the world to confirming whether it's a quote from somebody from ancient times or a data chart or something to pull it into the truth of the material. Those informational reflective loops, or however somebody would view that pattern of processing and self confirmation. And I imagine other people do similar things in this arena, but that was a very interesting pattern that you helped me to recognize. So thank you.
Well, of
That was
course,
fun.
because you just described our north and south node to a T,
Okay.
how it works. It's like, I'm
All
sure
right.
you brought in a lot of information in your life, and that information could have been a little wounding and ungrounding because it's all of these things outside of you,
Yeah.
and then it's learning, like, your North Star and my North Star has been taking that information and being like, "Well, what does that connect to me? What's my truth within it?" And, like, grounding it to your truth based on, like, the earth, like, that's how I use astrology, like you were saying, like, something to, like, ground you to be like, "Okay, yeah, I learned this information, and now how does that feel true to me? And then how do I wanna
Yeah.
describe it?" So I'm sure other people will totally get that because I think it's like a everyone has every archetype in their birth chart, and,
Yeah.
like, because you're Libra rising and you happen to have your South Node the year you were born in Gemini and Sagittarius, it's not a normal thing for 2 people to have these exact same. This is pretty rare.
Oh, cool. I love
Yeah,
it. This
it's
is great. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I love it. That's awesome. So there was actually something else in there too. And I think, if I may, because this is fun, when kind of trying to work through some of the pattern recognition of it, is pulling in. I can speak from experience. So just kind of walking through the door of example is pulling in all the material. Call it like the datas and the charts and the quotes and everything else. Some of it is to be able to pull it out again to externalize it to my surroundings just and this could come from like either childhood or experiences or something else, not feeling validated
Mhm.
for my feelings. So if I say like, well, instinctually I know this, and then the world would say, well, prove it. Like, can you measure it? Can you weigh it? So there's this there, and I'm not saying this is everything. Some of it is for self, but I can see the aspects of that within the pulling of the knowing and the securing and to own it in this world as well too, and to be able to articulate it or defend it or to explain it or teach it or what have you. So there was just something in there that I was just kind of picking up along with that pattern as well, not just for the personal usage, but also to navigate this world of communication, not just showing up as the feeling of the right brain or the emotional or the theoretical, showing up in being able to create the balance of it with the logical and being able to live within this life plane.
Yeah, it's like taking what you're learning and making your own meaning as opposed to
Yeah.
needing and nothing being right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be like, "That's wrong." It's like, well, literally nothing is right and wrong, it's made
Yeah.
up.
Which is really interesting, and it is all made up, it is, which is really interesting because prior to us jumping on, I was talking about as, the people live in the structural world where, we're kinda taught things of right, wrong, good, bad, binary, yes, no,
Mhm.
and it's so interesting that, people didn't witness that conversation, but it comes full circle in the sense of creating the confidence, the isness, the space between to be able to live with it, and if it is disagreed upon, that's okay. I've delivered the knowledge that I have within it and the feelings and the emotions, intuition, and everything else. And if it's not accepted, that's okay because it is right and it is wrong and it is all these things because some of it's interpretive, subjective, objective. So, and part of that journey is to, as far as healing ourselves and coming up and showing up in that confidence and the securities with that. I think some of it could be the collection of logic and to secure the collection of creative intuitions that we carry as well.
Totally, well, it's kinda like what I said in my story that one of the things that frustrated me most during nutrition was all the studies that contradicted each other, and I was like, "How could they
Yeah,
all be right?"
yeah. Well, yeah, and there's so much of that in life too. I mean, that's kind of a philosophical approach. It's kind of like flipping the question around in some way, shape, or form. We have the programs and the things that we think we were supposed to do because it was told to us by somebody, and it's kind of like some of the rules are completely opposite. Asking the right questions and
Yeah,
approaching it.
asking the right questions. That is so important, especially when it comes to astrology.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think where astrology can get toxic and not helpful is when people think that it's just happening to them. And that,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, an astrologer told me this is the horoscope." The question I hear people ask when they hear an astrology horoscope is, "How do I make sure that doesn't happen? How do I make sure I control it?" They'll literally just take it very literally and make it mean that they're powerless. So, the asking the right questions thing, especially when it comes to astrology, it's so important to remember you are the powerful one.
Mhm.
And that if you hear an astrology reading, it's not, "How do I make sure my boyfriend doesn't break up with me?" It's, "How do I need to think about myself? What lesson can I learn about myself to learn the lesson I need to learn here?"
And not let it kind of drive your emotions or be reactive to it. I can see that for sure. I could see people getting lost in that, and I don't wanna knock anybody who puts out daily horoscopes or anything like that. I don't know where that source code comes from, but if it says like, "Well, you're gonna have a bad day today," and you walk around thinking like, "All right, well, I'm gonna have a bad day." I mean, you're gonna kinda logically draw in some of that, or maybe it wasn't a bad day, but all you did was observe the bad points out of it. Maybe it really wasn't that bad. So now you've just brought observational awareness to that side, which, on a balance point, maybe it was just 3 things out of 10 that were bad, which is also human nature too. We tend to, 10 things happen, one was bad, 9 were great. Sometimes we focus on the one.
Totally. So, what I love people to think about astrology as is they're just energetic currents in the sky. I think the best astrologers remind you of that too.
Hmm.
They remind you, "This is where the energy is going. So, what lesson do you want to learn out of it?" Like, if the astrologer says, "Hey, there is some heavy energy this week, there's a lot of learning lesson energy." I could have said, "This week, you're going to get knocked down and have to get back up again a lot." And you could have been focusing on, "Oh God, when am I going to get knocked down? Oh, I'm knocked down. I don't know how to get back up." Or I could say, "Hey, there's lessons to be learned this week. What lessons are you
Yeah.
gonna learn? Like, what are you gonna learn about yourself? How can you take your power back? How can you respond to the situation differently?" Because that's what the astrology is asking of you.
Yeah. And I can see that too. So, it's interesting because, I mean, there's times in my life where I've always like, I'm like, I had fun with it. And I was like, just look, see what the horoscope is or something like that. But then I know there were times where I kind of use that example of like, oh, you're going to have a bad day, where it has happened.
Mhm.
Where I've looked at it and I'm like, just kind of, I was thinking I was kind of having some fun, but then I got drawn into some type of an external redirect where if I was kind of just, just kind of unaware or ignorant to my surroundings, I might not have noticed it in a sense too. But there is a learning capacity there too. If you ask for a big, bold, beautiful life, there's going to be lessons that are going to come. And however you view it, price to pay, or, there's uh, choosing the bigger hurts or whatever to get through the past. Sometimes the way is not, sometimes the way is through the pains and stuff like that too. But so here, I got a question about kind of astrology then too. And I'm going to say this kind of just, I'm kind of saying it just in a little silly way, but is there, um, not symmetry, but like, so if we're looking up at the stars, is it a big bunch of chaotic little lights that are just running around, crashing around, doing, wild stuff? Or is there a symmetry, really a fix, like almost like a well-defined Swiss clock or something like that? Or, is there, and I kind of just asking, I'm kind of asking this in a playful way. So just to kind of get your perspective on, just when we look up at the night sky and there's an association with all these heavenly bodies.
I look at all the planets moving around the sky as like puppeteers in the night sky, and they're all putting on different personalities at different times as because they move through different signs. They're like, "I'm acting in this way now." And I look at every planet in the sky as a different part of you.
Okay.
Like Mars is the part of you that has willpower and takes action and reacts to things and is aggressive. When it's moving through the sky, like right now it's in Cancer and it's in a retrograde. So we're reflecting on how we take action. And with it being in Cancer, we're reflecting on how we take action based on our emotions and what we learn to find emotional stability in our upbringing. So this week, for example, like if something came up for you, and you reacted to it the same way you always react to it, there is an opportunity for you to reflect on, why do I emotionally react in that way? And it keeps creating the same situation. How can I see this and react differently? And so, like, I think about when you think of the different planets moving through the sky, it's just different parts of you moving through the sky,
Sure.
puppeteering different situations to come up for you to learn lessons. And
Okay.
I almost look at us humans, I believe in the oneness. I don't know if you've done plant medicine, but, have you before?
Well, yes and no. Not more recently when it's a little bit more vogue now, where it's it's a curated type of situation. Mine was many years ago and much more chaotic
Oh, yeah.
in that sense. So,
Yeah. So I have felt the oneness on a mushroom trip before where I didn't know if I was me or my boyfriend was me or our friend was me. Like we were all one. And so I remember I was saying it to them. I was like, wait, I am you, you are me. I can't feel the separation. Like it was very clear to me there was none. And the way I look at the planets moving through the sky is I almost feel like we're one big energy cloud here on Earth, all of us, like all connected. And as the planets move, it creates like ripples in the energy cloud, like that.
mm,
And
mm,
as the planets move, it's like they'll make the planets will then come into different angles with each other. And if a planet's in a square angle, like a tighter, like a certain angle that it's making, it's going to create more tension in the ripple of the human consciousness. And so
mm,
more fights, for example, could break out or accidents or something like that. Whereas if the planets are moving and then they're creating more of a nice flow, like the angle's really nice, it's like a nice harmonious
mhm.
angle, we can see more of that show up in the human collective. So that's what I mean by they're like puppets making different like angles to each
Okay.
other, causing different tensions and different personalities. And they're all different parts of the oneness of the collective. And so then that part is playing out here on Earth. I believe we are not here to have one purpose. That's my belief. I believe we
Yeah.
are here to just learn lessons about love and to
Mm.
create more love.
It's interesting because you were talking about systems within systems, even within the body structure, and you go all the way down to the respiratory system, the nervous system, and the brain patterns, and everything else. And then you get into the singularities of the separation. People want to silo stuff in the body. And you go down all the way to a molecular level in the atomic. So you're talking about the macro and the micro, and then expand out of our body. We electromagnetic fields from our hearts and our brain waves, and there's frequency from our voice and everything in between. And then you create, then there's like kind of the larger collectives of people, so then the communities, and then you got the ecosystems and the jungles, and these all these trees and the connective roots, and you got the bodies of water, and I'm expanding out. You let the ocean itself, and then you have our lunar cycle, and the moon affects the earth.
Mhm.
And I mean, you just keep dialing it out. I think it's actually, I'm going to say something mean, but it's almost kind of arrogant to think that things aren't connected. That it's like, so if the planetary and the solar, we're hurtling through space, and there's this massive nuclear engine in the center of it burning hydrogen, this sun, and we're hurtling around that with a bunch of other big rocks and hurtling through space. I mean, it's really systems within systems. And to get myopic and say that there's no connection, I feel like it's like you're severing off even just the very thought of it, and just think of it if you can't think of it from a scientific view, just think of it from a philosophical view, to be affected by this, the ripples in the pond, like what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So, um, there really isn't a question there. When you were saying that, I'm just thinking of the systems within the systems and all the connectivity to it. I mean, it sounds logical and makes sense, but I'm sure I would get panned from most people in that case.
I know we talked for this how you feel very connected because you have your Mercury in the 12th house, and so you
Okay.
naturally live in that's the kind of a oneness area. It
Yeah.
allows you to think in the spirit realm.
Okay.
And what you just described was like that's very Mercury 12th house. Like you saw these images that move out and it connects all things, which is
Yeah.
why it's confusing because as humans we like to compartmentalize things.
Sure.
It's actually really fascinating because in astrology there is a planet called Neptune
Hmm.
and there is a planet called Saturn. A lot of people have heard of Saturn because of Saturn return. Neptune is the planet that rules spirituality and it has no boundaries. It is the interconnectedness of all things. It
Okay.
is where we project onto people because we forget that they're just a reflection of us. That's Neptune. If that planet is acting out in the sky, causing
Yeah.
angles, that's that energy playing out on Earth. It can cause people to be confused as to what's theirs and what's other people's.
Okay. Is that like assumptions too? Is that kind of fall in there?
The
Like,
land of all possibilities. And so because
okay.
there's no right and wrong and no boundaries, like what you think, you could think someone else thinks.
Right,
but
right.
really it's just that Neptune energy blending it all. And so Neptune rules the spirit realm. And every generation has a different zodiac sign that they have Neptune in. So that is like the part of the zodiac that they are connected to very spiritually for that generation. Um, but then Saturn, so okay, also before we got on this podcast, I have to back it up. You said to me sometimes you feel like you're this big source of energy that is stuffed into this
Yeah, yeah,
earth.
yeah. Sometimes it feels as if it takes a lot of energy just to keep all this atomic matter together in a sense.
Totally, because we are Neptune, we are limitless. Like our energy is much bigger than what's stuffed inside this body. Because we're here on Earth, we have to deal with Earth, and Earth kind of put up roadblocks for us to learn lessons about love. Neptune is unconditional love. And so, like,
Mhm.
it's almost like we come from Neptune, we come from that source of oneness and unconditional love, and we're here to learn lessons about love, about ourselves, through showing the opposite of love by cutting off the limitless possibilities through Saturn
Interesting.
structure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Saturn creates structures and rules and
Huh.
limitations.
Yeah. Because Neptune sound it almost feels nebulous in that sense, that Neptune energy that you were just talking about. It's very fascinating. I've heard that before.
Yeah, well, that's
So
why we're building a new Earth this year, which I'll get into in a second. We're gonna combine
yeah.
Neptune,
I
Saturn, and
yeah, please do because I've kinda heard a few different things about these next 5 years.
Saturn rules the bones of the body. What is the hardest thing in the body that holds the body together? It's the bones. When we come here, our Neptune soul comes through the sun and then it gets squeezed in the Saturn confinement of the body. You're limitless, but now your limitlessness has been cut off by Saturn's structure. We need structure on Earth because we're not just a puddle of everything. We're here to create and learn lessons. That's what Saturn does. Saturn is karma, it's here to teach you lessons. With Saturn and Neptune together, the last year, 2 years, as we've been moving into this new Earth, Saturn has been in the sign of Pisces. And guess what planet rules Pisces? Neptune.
Mm,
Been having us get clear on what's the spirit realm and what's real, and how to use our energy in the spirit realm to build structures and not be so logical. Like, because Saturn
yeah,
can be really concerned with the here and now, and that's partially how it blocks itself.
interesting.
Only
Huh.
relying on what it sees right here, right now, because it's what it's focusing on. So Saturn can make
Yeah,
the world really small and make you frustrated and make you feel like you can't escape where you're currently at. With Pisces, so every zodiac sign is ruled by a planet because it's like that
yeah,
personality comes from that planet. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune. With Saturn and Pisces, it's been teaching us, it's almost been like preparing us for the next 5 years
okay.
and getting us in tune with what drains our energy. Because what drains our energy, that's draining life force energy. It's draining your sun. And if
Mhm.
it's draining your sun, your life force energy, it's not in alignment with you. And it's just a rule, a Saturn rule you're putting in place that's teaching you about what you don't love and what you do love.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting.
Right?
So, what about Jupiter?
So
Because that's kinda calling too.
Jupiter is the planet of growth, luck, and expansion. It's the planet of wisdom, and it's the planet that
Interesting.
creates opportunities.
Okay.
And right now, Jupiter is in Gemini. And so it's showing us that we create opportunities by how we think. And right now, also Saturn's in Pisces. Do you think you have to do this boring 9 to 5 that you freaking hate and it's draining all your energy and it's blocking off opportunities from your real self and real growth, luck, and expansion?
Mm,
Do you see how they all work together?
yeah,
They're all like
interesting.
talking.
Yeah, because we'll get to the new I was gonna say, to stay on Jupiter for a second
Yeah,
too, there was, I don't know if you ever listen or read anything with Dolores Cannon.
I've heard of her.
And she would talk about the planets had similar, but a little different, where the planets had was kind of almost dimensional energy and stuff like that. And some of those are the lessons and stuff. It was just fascinating. But Jupiter was actually supposed to be some of the harder lessons, some of the deeper lessons, or some of the harder souls
Was
journeys and
it
stuff like
Saturn?
that.
Jupiter, because Saturn,
Maybe with
Saturn's
Saturn. I
the
don't know.
hard
Maybe I
lesson.
thought she said Jupiter, but I don't. Again, this isn't. I don't delve or swim in this enough to be able to speak eloquently or depth on it. So
Jupiter could be
so that
hard
was my memory.
lessons, depend
Yeah.
Jupiter is more windfall, luck. Jupiter is the part of your chart where there's an excess of energy, and
Hmm.
think of it like I watched a TED Talk one time where she said, "Lucky people aren't lucky, they just cast a wider sail." That
Yeah.
is what Jupiter does.
That's what Jupiter is? Okay, cool. Yeah. Alright. I love that. No, thank you for talking about that because I didn't know that about Jupiter either.
You can gain wisdom through hard lessons in Jupiter, especially if you
Sure.
have hard aspects to Jupiter in your birth chart, because it is wisdom. But kind of like how we talked about wisdom earlier, where I learned everything about nutrition to the point where I realized I didn't need it anymore and I just had to listen to my truth. Jupiter's about truth. It's the wisdom that comes from having learned so much that you get in touch with your truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
So jumping here, let's jump into the new Earth. There is a lot of information and there's a lot of people talking about this, different capacities and different mindsets. Some people it up like almost kind of described as doom and gloom, and others an ascension or the idea dimensional changes and energetic changes, and it's kind of split. People hanging on to the antiquated and the idea ascension. People, so that's where I was kind of going, and it's just there's so much. It's not that there's noise about it. It almost seems like there's a relative consistency. There are a number of people that I've heard talk about these next 5 years being incredibly, I don't even know if the word important's the right word, but, impactful or whatever it is. So here, I'll stop ranting on about it, but I just wanted to kinda lead in with that 'cause,
So here's the thing. We're building a new earth. And here's what I have to say about whether it's good or bad. I always come back to you are the powerful one.
mhm,
And I do believe it could be bad for some people and it could be amazing for other people. And
mhm,
I believe you have the power to decide that. Like, are you going to flow with it and learn the lessons and self reflect and allow yourself to break rules and like step into this new life? Or are you going to hold on to dear life for this old version of you, this old life, and resist every step
yeah.
of the way?
Defend the old life and fight for the old, so,
And
okay.
I'm that's what I'm all about all the time, is it's like, it's about you. I'm an optimist. I have Jupiter in my ascendant, so my identity is to be more optimistic, and so I believe love wins. I always believe love wins, and I believe it will overwhelmingly be a good thing than a bad thing, but there will be
Yeah,
lessons to be learned, but I also fucking love lessons, so it
yeah,
really depends on how you look at it. That being said, yeah, the reason a lot of people say that is because a lot of those planets that are farther out, they rule generations. I talked about Neptune rules a generation. When generational planets switch into Aries of all signs, it's the start of the zodiacal wheel. It is newness, it's new beginnings. It's new beginnings for the collective, for everyone.
mm. Is that like the Tower card in tarot or something like that?
Card right now, since
Yeah.
the planets are in Pisces, it's like Pisces is karmic endings.
Okay.
It's endings of cycles, endings of self-sabotaging patterns, and so we're ending things right now, and, slowly over the next few years, those generational planets will firmly go into Aries, so they'll kinda go back and forth between Aries and Pisces.
Is Aries the god of war? Am I remembering
Ah,
that
that's the other thing.
correctly?
So this is where the other thing where I'm like, Aries is the god of war, and if you look at, and I'm not a fear-mongering astrologer, and I don't believe this is what's coming,
Yeah,
but,
it can mean many different things.
so if you look at the astrology that's happening right now and compare it to previous, what I feel is coming is a spiritual war and how much people are gonna own
Thank
their
you.
authenticity and
Yeah,
their truth and their
thank you.
energy.
Yeah, I agree with that because if you think about human history, it was much more externalized, much more physical of an environment. We had to hunt, we had to work the fields. We were self-reliant and stuff in a very physical way. The threats were animals, neighboring villages. It was a very physical environment. Now it's all become an environment of the mind. The wars are on Instagram. Don't get me wrong, there's still stuff in the world. I don't mean to dismiss
Mhm,
actual fighting in the world. Many of the battles are of expectations, people hiding behind the words of boundaries or whatever terminologies and things like that. It's a much different world. I have two young boys, and I think about them coming into this world. It is a world of emotional and mental. It is physical. They're not going to have to go out on a walkabout or a hunting expedition. I leave them in the forest, and if they survive, great. And man, it's a different of the mind. I don't mean to keep barreling down on this, but I think that I think when you said that, it really is. It's a different. There's a difference of it. It's one of the heart. It's one of the Father Sky and the Mother Earth, and
mhm.
in that realm of energetic. And I don't want to even use the word war. I don't even know if it really is a war because when you're talking about the heart, I don't know if it's actually a war.
Do you know what I think there might be a war of? And this is a mind war of using technology. So this is what I'm looking at with Pluto. Pluto just entered Aquarius. Pluto is power struggles, it is death and rebirth, it is the things that take your power away and the things that give you power. And it just entered Aquarius officially.
Mhm,
And I believe the war is gonna be of how we use our mindset and technology. And that you and I actually look at astrology as a technology, and I look at ChatGPT and all these different things as technology. And
mhm.
I think that, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities for you to unconsciously get into the dark side of technology, and I think there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for you to use technology to change your life and empower the shit out of you. But it's all about you learning to get into your own mind and figuring out what's right for you and almost detaching from the manipulation from, like,
Yeah,
media or something, for example.
yeah.
So but, like, what you said, a mind war? I don't know if it's a war.
If anything, it would be much more subtle, like what you're saying. The any type of power struggles, any type of they're going to be on the level of when I say resource, I kind of think of the money and the things like that and our people's relationship with those. But, let me touch on ChatGPT really quick. I think some of that stuff is interesting because I know and very neutral about it in
Mhm.
that sense, but in the sense that like machine thinking, we're never going to think like AI and AI will never think like us, but there'll be pattern recognitions there based on our programming. What'll be interesting is to see humans as some of it and I hate to use this, I don't want to use this word, but I'll just keep it in the same realm as this. Instead of us individualizing as much, you might see something where the communication and stuff becomes much more machine like. And, that could be the influence and the direction of some of the AI where it starts to transgress into the machine thinking versus the individual intuition. And there could be a bifurcation in those arenas. I'm not predicting anything. I don't know. This is just kind of playing with that thought process here.
Yeah, well, yeah. Do you know what it makes me think about? I was watching a show the other day, and it has a bunch of high school kids in it, and then parents, obviously. And in the show, the high school kids, they're trying to find this person, and the high schoolers come up, are like, "Oh, I already found him." And the mom's like, "How did you find him?" And she's like, "Oh, I just pulled in my phone and I triangulated their app to this, and I found them on this app, and then they're here." And the mom was like, "You Gen Zers, they're scary. Like, how do they do
Mhm.
that?" And I think the thing is that it's almost like we're becoming cyborgs where, like, people, like, especially kids, are learning how to use this technology at such an early age that it is becoming a part of how they live life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's Generation Alpha is after that. I think it's like 13 and under at this point, and they're kind of the first generation that's truly submersive in this, in like the phone world and the smartphone world and things like that, where their whole life is within this, pretty much within this kind of technological realm that we're currently in. Even though it's going faster, and there's other thing too is it seems like it's going faster. Is there a reflection in astrology with the speed of things?
Oh, yeah, so that's a thing. This next year is starting rapid growth.
Yeah,
'Cause think about it, that's what technology does, and that's what I mean by you could use it for good or for bad. It can rapidly put you into a hole. Like, if you talk to ChatGPT and you don't ask the right questions, for example, um,
sure. Goes back into questioning the right
yeah,
questions.
could get into a dark hole probably talking to
Mhm.
ChatGPT. Um but also, like, over this next year, I'll tell you, I use chat in a lot of my practices now. I'm building my own based on my own mindset and how I look at astrology and things because I've had my own breakthroughs and I want people to have the same breakthroughs I'm having. But when you use astrology with ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is linked to the infinite resource of astrology knowledge, you can
Okay.
gain insights about yourself during certain situations. And I have a breakthrough almost every other day now because of ChatGPT. And that's
Really? Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so I wasn't using ChatGPT to transfer my
I love the marrying of that too. Sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say is I never personally thought of that connection point. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's why I'm building a chat now because it's what I use in my membership is I give them the weekly energy report and then I teach them how to ask the right questions to chat so they know how it applies to their chart and how they need to think about themselves and lessons they need to learn. And chat gives them the whole plan for how to think about themselves, what could happen. They can ask
Okay.
it more questions. They can say, "This happened in my life. How does this relate to what Rachel said? And what could I
Yeah.
learn about it for me?" So that is rapid growth. Like, when have we had a
Yeah.
technology like this before? And this is what I mean by like, a lot of structures are gonna come down over the next few years.
Sure.
It's what happens when Pluto leaves a sign, especially Pluto in Capricorn. A lot of the hierarchical structures are gonna fall.
It's funny you said that because that's some stuff I've kind of heard people talk about too. That antiquated hierarchical view, those are kind of breaking down. Whether it's just how internally we view that as the recognition of just we're all human beings, we all put our pants on the same way type of thing, where people used to put people on a much greater pedestal, the kind of understanding that we're all connected. And when you know you're connected or your reflection, like I am you, I am them, that recognition, it does kind of level that. I could see that for sure.
So, like, even this ChatGPT example I give in my community, for example, it's different than a hierarchical structure. If it was hierarchical, I would be like, "This is what's happening. This is what I think for you. This is what could happen for
Good
you."
point.
Whereas when I give them tools to empower themselves, Pluto power through technology, they can do their own self-discovery, and I'm not above them. It's like, "This
Yeah.
is what's happening. You are equal. You get to figure out." And then also, I think a lot of businesses are gonna be less about, "I hired you as a consultant," to, like, we're all sharing, and it's like everyone's needed.
Yeah.
And so, I see banking systems falling because the banks are the hierarchical structure. The bank's controlling all your money. Like, my dad has a business and a much bigger business than me because he's been a lot around for a lot longer. And Stripe, for a while last year, was withholding 60K a month from him because of 10 returns he had because of stupid rules they make up because they're
Wow.
in charge and they process the money.
Absolutely.
And so I see a lot of organizations like that falling away over the next 3 years, potentially even this year.
Yeah. I could see that too, because us as humans, we want to solve problems. So, like, if you see something like that, there's probably somebody out there utilizing AI to do it better, how to structure it better. And, it's not all bad. It can get easy to get wrapped up in the fear because it's change. Then you get into the self sabotage of the fears of success and the fears of change and things like that. Then the human us, the earth us kind of sets in there. But I could see that in a positive way. I could see a lot of stuff kind of really changing and having more options and having more transparencies, just having more transparencies and more options and more people structuring it in potentially a fair way. Some of it might be self-directive back to the person who's creating to make more money, to do things. Of course, that can happen too. But if there's more transparency, some of that stuff kind of irons itself out too.
I feel like that's why crypto has become bigger and bigger and bigger. It's decentralized
Yeah,
finances. I have money invested in this certain group of people right now, and what they're doing is they lend my money out to people to trade with, and then I get interest on the money they lend out. So it's like I'm acting as a bank right now.
that's awesome.
Can do that's like the future is
Yeah,
decentralized and people working
right.
together and like crypto, for example, like Aquarius is about going for a cause, a humanitarian cause. That's crypto. Everyone's like, I believe in Bitcoin, I believe in this meme coin, and then people are making millions of dollars on like coins called poop coin, like, and that's kind of where we're headed. That's very Aquarian also.
Yeah,
It's just weird,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's, I love it. Um, So, I could definitely go on all day here. So how I want to do this though is I guess if people are going to be, well, just for a very basic level, if they want an entry point, a familiarity point with astrology or to keep their feet wet, I mean, you got some kind of general advice in that arena?
Yeah, initiate advice. I would start by downloading your birth chart, getting to know your birth chart. I like to use the Time Passages app because you'll put your birth information in, it will give you the circle wheel, but most people don't know how to read that. So then if you go over, it'll
Yeah.
give you a list and it will tell you, you have this planet in this sign in this house. And what you could do if you want to do your own self-empowering research is you could open up a chat GPT bot. I have an astrology chat GPT bot I can share with you if you want to put in the show notes for this or something.
Yeah.
You can ask it, hey, this app says my sun is in Leo in the 11th house. Tell me about it. And you could just start learning about the different parts of you, AKA the different planets in your chart and how they play out
Okay.
and start there. I think that's the best way to start learning about yourself. But it goes deeper than this. I want everyone to know like, if you learn about the planets, you're like, yeah, but not exactly. Well, that planet that you're looking at could be talking to another planet. And so then if you wanna go even deeper, also on time passages, so it has the circle app, and then you can click over, it gives you the list of your planets. Then you can click over again, it gives you a list of what aspects the planets you're making to each other, so then you can copy and paste. It says in this
Oh my
list,
god.
this
Yeah.
planet's making this aspect to this planet. What does that mean, ChatGPT? And it can tell you about that.
I'm sure you can go down a lot of rabbit holes with that, but no, that does sound really interesting though too. And I think, yeah, just leveraging the technology, I think this is a great way to somebody to kind of get their feet wet. I know there's a lot of information out there, but I do like that you are putting it in a way to empower people versus just kind of telling them or creating a dependency on you. So I do appreciate you. I wanted to say that, because there's a lot of, I've had conversations on other podcasts about coaches and mentors, and, it's a phenomenal way to help accelerate your life, but there can be a little bit of a draw on that side or codependency situations or people getting wrapped in egos and stuff like that. Good mentors and teachers are there to truly empower somebody for the highest and best of their journey. So just by you saying that, I just want to recognize that
Thank you.
in you. Yeah.
That's why I'm making my specific own ChatGPT bot, and I'm gonna push everyone and their mother towards it because 'cause I'm giving it, like, certain
Nice.
mindsets to guide people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what here, before we go, where can people find you or reach out to you, or what's the best way to?
Yeah, so if you wanna learn, just more about the week, like, the astrology that's playing out in the sky and how it can relate to you, I have a podcast too, it's called the Astrology Magic Podcast. I think
Mhm.
that's the best place to learn to, like, get in my world and hear about me. Um I'm also on YouTube, Astrology Life Magic. I think I gave you on Podmatch, there is a free Activate Your Joy challenge. I love for people to start with that because it teaches you how to use astrology in an empowering way and to activate your joy, which is very important for this next year.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah. Perfect. And I'm sure you're on all the
I
other
got
handles as well
off
too.
Instagram because of my astrology. Yeah, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I used astrology as an excuse, and now that I'm off, I've been off it for since September, and oh my god, I can't tell you, like, my business is still doing just as well, I'm fine. That's how I came up with, like, these new
Awesome.
creative ideas, like, I'm more creative than ever, so, um, yeah.
That's cool though. I mean, that's cool. The recognition on that. Yeah. I love it.
But
Yeah.
you can check out my Instagram, it's at Rachel_Varitimos, it's just gonna be a bunch of older content, but I do have content on there.
No, that's cool. But yeah, for sure. We'll be able to get to reach out to you and stuff. So thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you, this was a great conversation, I appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks.